Our talk today, inshallah, is about goodness, which is every deed that it is hoped for, wished for, logically, sensibly, and heavenly. And it is the opposite of evil and wickedness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, in Surah Al-Najm, verse 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "To Allah belong all that's in the heavens and on earth, so that He, Allah, recompenses those who do evil according to their deeds, and He rewards those who do good with what is best." Because of the essential need of life and the living for goodness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the virtue of goodness for His sake in many verses, declaring that He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is with those who do good, love them, and will not discount or ignore their reward for what they do of good deed on earth while they can. My dear brothers and sisters, goodness applies to many aspects of our existence. First, and the highest rank of goodness is for the servant, for you and me, to be good to himself, to your own self, in his relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Creator. Worshipping Him with conscious awareness that Allah is close to him and know all his affairs and what he does in public and in secret. The angel Jibreel said, goodness is to worship Allah as if you see Him. Goodness is to worship Allah as if you see Him. And if you do not see Him, He does see you. Second, is for the servant to be good to himself in all his deeds pertaining to his faith and his earthly matter. Regarding his faith, the servant should be good to himself, matching his worship to the divine guidance and the divine laws of Allah, which He stated in the Quran and on the tongue of His Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Dedicating all free and clear to Allah alone, with no innovation and no contradiction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 112, "Nay, whoever submit his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his reward with his Lord. On such that who does good shall be no fear. On such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve." Allah also subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Whoever submit his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good has grasped indeed the trustworthy hand held." He held the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with Allah rests the end and the decision of all affairs. That is Surah Luqman verse 22. To submit your whole self to Allah is to purify all your deeds from disbelief and to follow the Sunnah. Very simple formula. For it to be a good deed, you have these two conditions. No disbelief in Allah, not to associate partner to Allah in your deeds. Your deed is free and clear to Allah. It's not for a friend, for a tribal, for a nation, for a goal, for anything you want to accomplish. It is free for Allah's sake and to follow the Sunnah. If any deed does not qualify with these two conditions, is not qualified as a good deed. Regarding deeds of earthly matter, Allah commanded His servant that whoever assigned a kind of a job must do his best to accomplish perfectly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Do good, for Allah loves those who do good." Imam Abu Ya'la and At-Tabarani narrated on the authority of Aisha, may God be pleased with her, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Allah loves if any of you does a deed, is to do it perfectly." As goodness commanded in deeds and intention, is also commanded in what you say and what you utter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Speak kindly to people a very clear command: speak kindly to people. This means is to utter the word of goodness which attract love, bring hearts together, and entice righteousness. It is narrated that Ata, in his command, that this verse is related to everyone, believer and non-believers, Muslim and non-Muslims. Speak kindly to everyone. My dear brothers and sisters, the third kind of goodness is to be good, compassionate, and generous to others by helping the needy, feeding the hungry, giving the deprived, assisting the disabled, easing hardship, solving disputes, and spare no effort to attend to the common good and interest by any means of money, effort, and knowledge. Just dedicate yourself to the common goods with what you can of money, knowledge, or effort. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah commands justice, the doing of good, and give it to kith and kin. Allah also said in Surah An-Nisa, verse 36, serve Allah and join not any partner with Him. Serve Allah and join no partner with Him. And do good to parents, kinsfolk, orphans, those in need, neighbors who are near, neighbors who are strangers, the companion by your side, the wayfarer you meet, and what your right hand possesses. For Allah loves not the arrogant, the self-absorbent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the arrogant, the self-absorbent. In these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands goodness collectively to everyone. Then specify all this avenue to extend goodness to others and shelter them from any adversity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands goodness to all, and give you just some examples to assist and to save any adversity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the pious, those who are mindful of Him, those who are mindful of Allah's commands, those who will be the owner of the delight in the heavens, as those who manifest goodness on earth when they could and while they can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them in Surah Al-Dhariyat, verse 16 and 19, and listen carefully. This is for all of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, talking about the pious, how they reach this high state of being completely, consciously mindful of Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them, they lived a good life. They lived a good life. They were in a habit of sleeping but little by night. And in the hour of every dawn, they were found praying for forgiveness. And in their wealth and position, the beggar and the outcast who don't ask had due share. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala illustrated the reason the pious are eligible to all these glorious bounties, which is what they accomplished before on earth of goodness, which is open to all of us today. It's available to all of us to harvest today. Goodness which even directed to livestock and all animals. As the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is commanded us to feed these animals, water them, and when we slaughter some among them, it is done with goodness and compassion. My dear brothers and sisters, there are many avenues of goodness in our earthly life, from feeding the needy, donating, making water available for the thirsty, building mosques, printing religious books, distributing the Quran, providing assistance to Islamic centers and schools in foreign countries. Doors of goodness are plenty. Doors of goodness are plenty. And it is essential for every Muslim to knock on the doors and participate in what he can, especially those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on them money and knowledge. As what they do on earth is what will last for them after they cross over to the hereafter. You are not taking anything with you. Nothing on earth that you collect or you store or you save will last. except what you give and what you provide. Imam Ibn Majah and Ibn Khuzaymah narrated on the authority of Abu Hurairah that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, what follow the believer among his deeds after he dies? Knowledge he learned and taught and shared. Knowledge he seeked to learn. It's an effort to seek knowledge about your faith and about the guidance of Allah in the Quran and the interpretation, the correct interpretation, and the command of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it's a knowledge you learn and you share and you teach. Righteous son that he left behind, mosque he built, house to shelter a transient passing by, a canal to excavate, to run waters, to help others, or a charity that he gives out from his money in his life and while he is well. It's a charity that you give while you are alive and you are well, you're doing well. You are not in need of anything, you're giving it clearly for the sake of Allah. All this will follow him after he dies. Work hard, my dear brothers and sisters, to share and to have a share in anyone or some of these avenues of goodness. And the luckiest among us is the one who have a share in each one of them. May Allah make us among those who learn and teach and share and have a share, inshallah, in all avenues of goodness. Assalamu alaikum.